Hello and welcome to Audionautic Deep Space Network, episode 148. This is the Independent Musician's Guide to Production and Promotion. And today, the dust is settled on NAMM. We got to see some cool gear, got to talk about some awesome stuff. Now we've got to talk a little bit more not so great stuff. And that's, of course, with Spotify. It seems like every other week we've got to cover Spotify. But Curtis has a rundown on everything that's been going on from some articles that have come out, lots of changes, things we need to be aware of as independent musicians. Whether you want to be on Spotify or not, it is helpful to talk about it. Like, we're going to talk some changes we're making in our approaches to stuff with releases we have coming out. And then we didn't get to cover this last week because we ran out of time. There was just too much gear to talk about, but we're going to talk third-party versus stock plugins. Why nots, and wheres. I said that last time too, but that was from Curtis. I just really like that. But my name is Sunwarper. With me today is Curtis. What's going on? Oh, right in a sip. I'll let him take that sip for a second. Hold on.
Got it. Here, way ahead of you. I knew it was coming. We're in. Got some new tea. Have to get my fix. Yeah, bro, it's going all right. It's going all right. Busy, but in a good way, necessarily. Yeah. The wonderful time that we had during NAMM has come and passed, as all things do. All things do come and pass. And now we have the yang to our yin. We do have a bit of a, as Smiling Arrow said in the chat, hopefully it won't get too rowdy.
We'll see. No promises.
Exactly. But yeah, no, it's been good. I having just picked up the Tascam a few weeks ago, I lent it out to a friend. And so I've been doing point and clicks recently. Which is
interesting.
Fun. Just dragging loops in, dragging samples in, and playing around. It's good fun. Very different, and it's never ever going to replace the fun of doing things like live looping and playing with hardware ever. But it's good to learn about structure. It's good to try something different every now and then.
I always feel hampered when I try doing just point and click. Like, I can't. The ideas I can do with muscle memory in my hands don't necessarily correlate when I'm just like trying to, draw them with not a pen, but with a mouse. It's a little better like on an iPad when you can tap it out, but even then it's not quite the same. And you can always use the little, QWERTY keyboard. I've done that before. Like when you're desperate, you do the beats on A or whatever, A and S.
Exactly. Yeah. And it is. It's same to you. Like, the muscle memory that comes from just doing stuff in the natural workflow has been challenged, and I like that. I appreciate that because it reminds me to mix it up, and it reminds me to change things around a little bit. And while I could, throw out a few chords on the Ultranova and then loop them, for example, while it might be mundane, while it not be as pretty or as flash, keying stuff in and just sitting there. It allows different things to come through, right? So, like, for me at least, it's things like structure. Like, I can really focus on structure and how to create consistent joy and consistent sound coming through in the continuation of the process. It's good fun in that regard.
Yeah, I hear you. It's good to work outside of our comfort zones, right? Try something different.
Exactly. So we talk about that. What have you been doing?
Well, right beforehand, I was like, I'm going to play some drums because you weren't in the call yet. So I was like, I've got a second. I have a free moment. So I went to turn it on, which is behind the desk. And you might see this one looks a little empty. And that's because I went and leaned on it a little too hard as I was trying to turn on the power strip. And everything on this shelf just fell. And I thought I broke a couple things. They all seem to be okay. And I still got a few minutes of drumming in, which is good. But I've been all right, man. I've been doing a lot with the tracker workflow, and I've really been liking trackers and like doing that vertical step programming because I guess the Digitact was inspired by trackers in its workflow, but it is much more horizontal in its programming and stuff. But all those like per step effects you can do, and even on the P6 a little bit, you can do this like crazy on the tracker. So it's really fun. It's daunting because it's a completely different workflow. It's very strange to like learn on because a track doesn't necessarily mean it is an instrument. You can put things from any instrument on any step on any track. So you can do this crazy. I don't know. There's just like so much flexibility in the programming of it. I can get why like IDM and that type of stuff has such crazy chaotic moments because it's so easy to do and it's so fun to do in a tracker workflow. So I'm like, ooh, so yeah, it's fun because I've been making music in genres I would not normally like. I like working in, but I don't typically because it just kind of calls for that more like fast IDM, you know, chopping up amen breaks and doing stuff like that. It's cool. So that's what I've been up to besides just doing, you know, the YouTube stuff. Got some more videos in the pipeline and all that. So yeah,
It's cool.
but I do want to say before, sorry, do you have something you wanted to add? Sorry, Curtis, I want to say hi to the chat, but go ahead.
Go say hi to the chat.
All right, I want to say hello to everybody in the chat. We've got Smiling Airs, which Curtis already mentioned, but this was before we even went live. This one is going to get feisty yet. We'll see. Abby is in the chat. Also, Mike is going to try real hard not to swear. That's all right. You guys can. It's just us that we have to be mindful of. But go ahead, whatever. If I have to remove it, I will. But, you know, it's all right. Cresshead is also here. What's going on, Cresshead? Cresshead says, Spotify, nope. And Mike says, I am now not on Spotify. Nice. Yeah, we're going to talk some differences and changes we're doing. Mike has an opinion, which doesn't surprise me, about the third party versus stock plugins. Let's see, what else have we got? Yeah, we'll get there, Cresshead. But if you want to mention this when we get in there too, but Bandcamp, yes. Amazon Music download, yes. Physical media, yes. Huge yes on the physical media for sure. Also, hello to one of our patrons, Asaph Stripe, and Abby, another of our patrons. I think I said hello to Abby, but Abby is also in the chat. Welcome all. It's great to see you. Yeah, trackers, old school. Yeah, I've been working with the Polyend Tracker Plus and having a lot of fun with that. So we'll talk more about that probably in like a month or two because there's a lot we have to cover before we get there. But Curtis, what were you going to say?
I cannot remember now, and that's okay.
We're talking trackers, if that's any help.
Mix. Yes, that's it. So again, in our very much in our yin and yang kind of existence, both stepping out of existing workflows and exploring new ones in our own different way. That's what I was going to say.
Nice. There you go. Yeah, definitely. It's funny how we're both going in different directions, but trying new things. But it is cool. I don't know. Have you ever messed with a tracker or like
Never.
A tracker program? I think everybody should try it now because I think there's free apps that are trackers and stuff. It's a lot of fun. Just like if you like doing automation and stuff like that, programming per step, crazy things like that. It's crazy. There's a lot you can do with it, but it is weird. It looks like you're working in an Excel sheet, which is a bit strange as someone that does not like Excel or spreadsheets, but you get used to it quick when you realize what you can do with it.
I don't mind a good spreadsheet. Maybe it's something worth exploring. To see.
You're a spreadsheet enthusiast. That doesn't surprise me because whenever we talk about like ADSN stuff, you're like, I made a spreadsheet.
I've got to keep it organized, man. I've got to kind of get an idea of what's going down. I was just wondering if we get any brownie points for actually going up on time today. That's what I want to know.
I don't know. Did we go up on time?
We went up on time.
I have no sense of time anymore. What is time, man? It's a construct.
It is a construct, but we went up with this notion of ideas. Now, while you can you introduce what we're talking about in our first segment for today? I'm going to put a little poll up for everyone for our next Discord challenge. So
yeah, sure. Okay, so before we do that, I'm going to just mention Cresshead's not a fan of trackers. That's a shame, but I get it. I totally get it. I never even tried one until very recently, but got a Seek track last Sunday. That's awesome. How are you liking it? Because I remember you knew a lot about the Seek track, I think, in the last ADSN. I don't know if you had it yet, though. So I'm curious to hear what your take is on it now that you have it and all that. Because I remember I think it was you, Cresshead, that was mentioning all the features and stuff. It looks sick. I really liked my time with the Seek track. I still really want to try more with the sampling functionality. I think it was you and others in my NAMM video mentioned it's very kind of simple. It's only one track and all that. But I don't know. I always like seeing those limitations. Like how far can you push it? Like the circuit tracks. You can't even call it a sampler, but you can put samples into it. But it's still like it was fun to see how far you can go with its limitations. Sleeping State, of course, has an opinion on trackers. This does not surprise me. But whatever you think, man, I've been enjoying it. I've been making music outside my normal. So if it works for me. You try it if you want. Yeah. All right. So let's move on to the topic, though. Do you have it queued up? I'll still bring it up, but do you have it queued?
I have here. Do you want me to? Bring up the?
Well, let
link
me
that I-
just mention what we're talking about. I already did a little bit in the intro, but yes, Spotify, big shock. More changes. Not great for everybody, except for maybe, the major labels who made this deal. But yeah, Spotify, I guess, announced, and you can explain more on this. This was your topic, streaming 2.0. And Curtis is going to talk the restructures, what it is, and what it means for artists, specifically independent artists, who consistently keep getting, what should we call it? I'm trying to think of the polite way to say getting, the well, it's not good for independent artists, and it's consistently not good. Here we go. Go ahead, Curtis.
Well, for many of us who have been following this, this is kind of more of a ratification of something that has been brewing for a while. So for us, yeah, it's not quite new, but for those who might not know, this has been a long time coming. But essentially, this is the start of it, where Spotify and major record labels have been entering deals, long-term deals with each other that effectively restructure and change the way in which royalties are paid out, and in return, how artists are promoted and incentivized within the streaming model. Apparently the changes to such a degree that Daniel Ek has come out and said this is streaming 2.0, which is sickening to hear if you think about it in a certain way. Basically, the idea is to come around to this notion where they're going to supposedly make a new artistic-centric model, or artistic-centric monetization. The idea is to deepen fan engagement and increase monetization for artists and songwriters, assuming that they're on the label, and therefore they would get a bigger payout or a bigger share of the royalties coming back in the other way. They should as well then get more exposure on these platforms, and the idea is that it's kind of like a cycle in that sense.
But of course, they define who the artist or who the artists are, right?
Exactly. And that's the really interesting thing. This is very much, if you are part of the UMG group, or if you happen to be part of a major label, then yes, that is where you get your priority. If you are like us and you're independent, maybe you self-distribute, maybe you go through an independent label, this has quite different connotations for you. Now, we have seen the slow erosion of royalties as independent musicians over the years, and that is only just going to be continuing, and so probably if trends are the same, getting worse. If more revenue for the top artists, it means there's less for us here at the bottom. And they say, and they're quite open about this, that there's going to be a redistribution of royalties. So that is a ratification of monetization for those below 1,000 monthly listeners. And the main, say it again, sorry.
Per track.
1,000 per track, yeah.
Yeah, it's that 1,000 streams per track, right? Was their latest royalty per year.
Exactly. And so yes. And with this as well, this is only like direct royalties. This doesn't even get into things like mechanical licensing. There doesn't seem to be any decent evolution in that as well. If anything, it means that what it has done is thrown a bit more murkiness into the idea of mechanical licensing and how that is in fact going to be paid out to artists. So that's another important stream of revenue for artists, but that in its own right tends to be lost in these kind of deals as they go through.
Well, hold on. I want to read a little chat. Let's take a few seconds because we need to clarify something too. First, ASF Stripe, another patron, says erosion, kind way to put it. But I want to cover something. Sleeping State says, don't understand the poll question, specifically the second one. So let's take a minute, let everybody get their breath before we continue with the erosion. And do you mind just clarifying those for those that want to vote? Because I can't see on StreamYard, I can't even see the poll. So
I get you. That's fair. The first option is the Lingering Light remix. So we have a release coming out at the end of the month, which is Sunwarper's Through the Quiet Dark. It's an EP, and one of those tracks, the leading track on that, is Lingering Light. The first option, if you choose that, would be we provide you the stems and that you remix that.
Yeah, but there's a cool bit of context there, is that I flipped a Curtis song for the main sample, so it's a combo of Curtis and I. So if you want to just kind of get a to work with some stuff that we've done, that's the one. And then the other one, which is I'm totally blanking. Oh yeah, work outside of the box, like work outside of your norm. So if you work, is this right? If you work in the DAW normally with like keyboards and stuff or hardware, then do point and click like what he was doing, just a mouse and keys. And then if you do DAWless, work in the DAW. If you work in the DAW, do DAWless or something, or work with your iPad or something, right? You might have more, but this is what I recall.
Exactly. So the idea is that if, for example, if you are Mike and you work entirely in Ableton, entirely in stock plugins, you have to, for example, at least work in
Audacity.
Work in Audacity or work with third-party plugins. If you are like Asef, where you tend to lean towards DAWless and you tend to lean towards live tracking, maybe try doing some point and clicks, for example. That the idea is to change this up and completely change your workflow from before. And just to say here, if you just click on the poll, it does collapse. But if you click on it, you should just it should just pop back open again. Yeah. So that's the idea. If you want to remix a remix in a way,
but it's not quite a remix. It is its own original track, but it's a flip. It took something of yours, like the first couple seconds, and then I did repitch, chopped it up, did some like granular stuff. But I'll put that main sample up. That's kind of a collab flip between Curtis's original guitar idea and then what I did with it. So yeah,
exactly.
Nice. Smiling here says he's all for destroying the Sunwarper track. That one you did that last time was awesome too. So I'm always curious to see what you do with it. So yeah, but I whatever you guys want to vote for, I'm game to do. So
we'll put it in here. So we'll by the end of this, by the end of the show, the polls will be in, and then we'll put
I'll put real quick, if you want to hear what that song is, I'll post the link.
Yeah, we are going to do something fun in this new year. We are going to take a bit longer with them. We're going to allow 6 weeks because we found that the last year the quick turnaround time wasn't very good for anyone. However, and as well as that, we are going to work out some form of collective democratized kind of winner, so to speak, without it being too competition-like. But we are going to be able to give away gift vouchers this year, which is going to be fun. So the one deemed the most appropriate or the best or whatever will get a $10 Toman gift card, which is going to be fun.
And I looked, it does say it delivers to the US, but if those in the US or elsewhere prefer something, we can discuss it. But that was our best idea, is that would probably be the best one to do.
Yeah. So yeah, that's that one. We can, if anyone's got any more questions on that, we can come back to it in the community corner. For now, let's return.
Yeah, that was a nice breath of fresh air. So let's get back to the dystopic themes here of Spotify.
So basically, this is where we're at, and this, like I say, this is kind of a ratification. This kind of condenses everything that we've been seeing unofficially and through hearsay over the last couple of months, maybe to a year. But it does seem to be that way, and we are now entering this world of streaming 2.0, and it does seem that Spotify are leading the way. They do have the biggest market share, but companies such as Amazon Music were already approached by UMG to do this, and they did get to the end stages of the idea of ratifying this for themselves, and it fell through, which suggests to me that will come back just as strong as ever in the long run. Essentially, it seems as though, again, major artists and labels will maintain higher revenues and greater control of the flow of music, the flow of product across the world. In the independent world, payouts will continue to be unpredictable, insufficient, and just less and less point, essentially, of us putting our time, energy, and effort into something like streaming. Yay. That's what we've got from that. It is it's interesting, and it's something that we have been thinking about for a while, but it does force us to once again look, as independent artists, is it even worth us putting our time, energy, and effort into it anymore? Or even if there is, what does that look like?
Yeah. I mean, do you want to talk about that now, or is there more you want to discuss?
Well, it's for now. I think that would be good. I think we can sit and we can grumble and we can moan and we can swear all we want, but you know me, I always try
jacket of the on, I guess. Well, let's throw it first to the chat, because I'd like to hear all of your opinions. I think Mike already said, like, I'm not on Spotify anymore, but while we discuss our thoughts on this, like, is there a place for Spotify and streaming in general in our music releases, both as a label and as artists ourselves? Let us know the same thing in the chat. What do you think? Are you putting your music still on Spotify and streaming in general? Are you not? Have you ever? Let us know in the chat. But Curtis, what about you? I mean, you've been working on this new album for a while. I'm curious to hear your thoughts. I have a lot of thoughts on this, but I want to hear from you first.
I like the idea of doing some form of like a reverse waterfall. Like we talked, like back in the day, a couple of years ago, we had like this waterfall effect, they called it, where you if you have an EP or an album, you might release 2 or 3 in sequential months and then release it in full, right? That was the idea. That was the way forward. I like the idea of just doing it the other way. So, for example, I've got a 5-track ambient EP, which I finished last week, which I need to find a place for. I like the idea of releasing it on Bandcamp first and foremost as the full 5-track EP, which you can get there. And then over the subsequent 5 months, the singles will be released on Spotify. They all like fit in a box, so to speak. They're very ambient-y, and there's no diversion. They're playlistable, if for want of a better phrase. So why not have the release on Bandcamp, where if you want to see it, you can, and see the story, you can get it all and support it in the best place for an independent musician. And then on its own, and on a platform that I don't really care about, i.e. Spotify, Apple Music, etc., then they just get batched 5 months in advance. I don't have to think about it for another five months or so.
Oh, interesting. Yeah, that makes sense.
And then if it goes, okay, I check in once a month, send it to playlists if I really want to, or not, don't have to. And then I just, it's just like a passive form of social media. It's there, but, it's all automated essentially.
I get that. Yeah, it exists.
Exactly. Spotify, it exists. I like that.
Well, I meant more like Curtis on Spotify. It exists. But yeah, that's a good approach. I get that.
Yeah. Mike brings up an interesting question. If I do a reverse waterfall, will they accept singles for playlists if they're already released? It's a good question. And that's why, you might release a single at the beginning of the 5 months. Maybe they wouldn't, maybe they would, maybe they would, maybe they wouldn't. And maybe it works per set. So for example, I know a lot of ambient playlisters personally, for example. Now, I'm not saying they necessarily would, and I'm not speaking for anyone, but it might be a case of say, hey, I've got another release out this month. It's actually out on Bandcamp, but it's technically out on streamers today. It's still a fresh release now. And go from there. Essentially,
I don't think you've run into that problem at all. If the release date on Spotify is date, doesn't matter. But I mean, you can submit old tracks to playlisters. If you're talking specifically playlists that are editorial, Mike, it does matter because you can only submit before it releases through Spotify for artists. But even at that point, if it's the first time it's released on Spotify, you can submit it. It's only if you, do a second track that has that one as like a B-side, you can't submit that song a second time, but you could submit the first track again. Does that make sense? Hopefully that makes sense. Okay, cool. Yeah.
I understand what you're saying. It's all good. So yeah, that's kind of what I was thinking. But that obviously works for an EP, which is very like that. I wouldn't do that for my album, for example, because my album's just not playlistable. So I wouldn't bother with that. But that's okay, you know. But it's only for stuff that Spotify would probably now be reserved for just the stuff that is a product at the end, or could be construed as a product as opposed to an art form. I think the artistic expression of streaming, especially for independent musicians, it's gone. I don't want to be dramatic, but I mean, I don't see any other way forward.
Yeah, I think it's crazy, but I think in the last year, given the changes Spotify themselves have rolled out, that whole idea of chasing playlists, but just, you know, music listening in general on Spotify seems to be, well, at least me personally, I would not recommend that to artists that are trying to grow. It makes very little sense. I've never liked that idea of, you know, the like those shows that are like play for exposure, or, you know, sell X tickets, you know, blah blah blah, but like that exposure stuff. And it's really, the Spotify has become the streaming manifestation of that with hey, you know, put your music on Spotify, but if you get under 1,000 plays within a year, you won't get paid. Oh, and if you do get 1,000 streams in a year, but that all happens after the first month it releases, we're only going to pay you for whatever happens after you hit that metric, not that other 1,000. I mean, it's ridiculous, and that's that alone, mixed with their whole handling of these AI playlists that they've just blamed artists that get placed on unbeknownst to them. They just blame the artist and then they punish the artists. Has really soured my appeal, or the appeal of Spotify for me, both as a consumer but as a producer as well. And so I've been completely shifting my focus. Like, I don't care at all about playlist placement anymore at all, because it's inactive listeners. Like, if you get placed on a big playlist, that's great. You spent a couple bucks to get on there, first of all. So now you hope you hit 1,000 streams so you can recoup that amount. But not only that, as soon as you're off that playlist, most likely people are just tuning into the playlist, not the artists. So it's a very small chance that they're going to go and become like, oh, I like that song, let me, you know, go on from there. I've not had any luck with editorial, so I can't speak to that, but I'm talking like these bigger playlists you use, Submit Hub, things like that. Beyond that, you have to pay typically for distribution. So you have to pay to get your music to be on Spotify, and then Spotify determines when they can pay you for the royalties. You're driving traffic to them, and they say, you know, that's not quite enough. So we're not going to pay you till you hit this certain metric we've just set. And that money that you sent us, or that you got people over to, is going to go to other artists and things like that. It's a very strange thing. So, yeah, a little bit of a rant there, but given that, it's really changed my approach to releases as well.
I hear that, and it's okay for ranting. You know, Eon Lake's not here this week, so we have to kind of keep that alive. And I totally hear you. I completely get you. I understand why there's absolutely no incentive for playlisting, you know, passive listing and stuff. It absolutely makes sense that there's no reason for you to put your energy and your effort there. And I completely agree with you. I'm not particularly fond or interested in getting playlisted or anything like that. I suppose what I hang on to is that is essentially, I was thinking about it last night, is we the people, in the sense that, okay, we are musicians, right? And we know about Bandcamp, and we know about independent music, etc., etc. We know it's the best place to support. Consumers are still not as aware of that as they once were. And I know that there are people who have found me on Spotify. I know that, for example, you know, my my sister, my mum, my dad, they all use Spotify, and that's how they listen to my music, and that's how they enjoy my music, for example. And it's as much as the Spotify detests me, I can't be. It's like I can't be angry
at the people. Exactly. No, and I'm glad you brought that up, because I didn't get to explain what at least for right now, where I've landed in terms of my release strategy. So I'm glad you brought that up, because it brings that up perfectly. My thinking was, I don't want to punish the listeners who are, because you can look on Spotify for artists, you have active listeners, super listeners, all these terms they've made, but like people who continually listen to you on a daily basis on Spotify, right? Like they don't deserve to not have things like that. And so my thinking for right now is, if I'm releasing an album, I'm going to take 4 tracks and put that, like I have an 8-track album out in February. 4 of those tracks are going to be on Spotify same day. And then I'm going to put, instead of putting that playlist as the pinned post on Spotify, I'm actually going to put a thing that says full album on Bandcamp and on my website, whatever it is. I will still keep saying, like, streaming, I don't think you can put Pandora back in the box, right? Streaming opened Pandora's box with, it's a lot of people don't have the money to be buying music, like all kinds of music, every day, right? I mean, on Spotify, you can listen to as many songs, albums, artists as you want in a single day, right? As long as time permits you to listen to. And I get that. And I'm not sure if we can ever revert back. I don't know. I'd love to be proven wrong. I just don't know if that's the case. So that's why it's like, I think it's still good to have some sort of presence there. But then I'm still hesitant on that because of the stuff I was explaining with the way you have to pay for distribution. They refuse to pay you until you hit some metric that they set. And that money that you're driving people to the traffic, I don't know, it doesn't sit right with me. So that's where I've landed for now. I don't know. I don't know if I'll stay there, but we'll see. But I think every step of the way, I'm going to actively encourage anyone who follows me on socials, my YouTube, anything like that, either, listen on YouTube, watch the creative process on my YouTube. If you want to stream it or buy it, Bandcamp, my website, anything other than Spotify. But I'm going to actively make mention, like, hey, because Spotify does this now, this is what's happening. So, I mean, I have no delusions of grandeur, but for anybody that might be listening to my music or something, I want to just at least do my part to kind of show what the landscape is for artists, because I don't know if a lot of consumers know that.
I hear you. I think it's just like a situation where the hippie needs to put the flower in the barrel of the gun. Kill it with kindness. I think it's all. I hear you. It's all very good to highlight the treachery and the disdainful, disgusting practices of Spotify and other streaming services. It's not just Spotify. They are mainly the problem.
Well, they're making the worst moves so far, and we have to say so far. Let me just share this one thing from Mike. Mike Smith says, friends don't let friends listen on Spotify, steal their phones, log them out, change their passwords, delete Spotify. Those are harsh words, man.
They are. And I hear the incentive behind it, and I understand the sentiment behind it, and I agree with it in the long run. It's just, we live in a world where there's just so much pitting people against each other, and many people complaining. My feed is just people moaning, and maybe that's my algorithm. Maybe that's just where I'm at as a human being. But I don't want to add to that. No amount. I'm another white dude with a podcast. Like, what I have to say doesn't really count for much in this world, and that's okay. I have my opinions, and all it's about is like, okay, you want to support me, go to Bandcamp. All we can do is we can sit and we can talk about these things when they arise. I'm not going to go on a war path. I'm not going to go on a big campaign.
No, that's why I still think it's good to have a place there, like it's there, kind of like what you were saying, it exists on there. But I think limiting what exists on there, like on my end or on the artist end, but also actively not promoting that. Like for anyone that finds it on there or wants to, finds you from something else and then wants to listen there, that's where I've landed. But I mean, I also have YouTube channel that's now become my main focus, and that I can monetize the creative process rather than the end result. So I have a bit of a different perspective as well. But I don't know. I still think Bandcamp website, that's the way to go for right now. And it could change. I still think having a place on streaming makes sense, especially just to be everywhere. I still like that idea, be everywhere. But I think it's coming to the point now where it's like have these differing amounts of being everywhere, you know?
I hear you. Yeah,
But I
completely.
totally get what you're saying. There's always negativity, and social media, I think, breeds a lot of negativity because that's what gets more interaction. So the algorithm pushes that because it's getting people to stay on the platform and things like that. So yeah.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. And this is continuous and this is ever evolving, as is existence. So I'm sure we'll come back to this in a few weeks to see, especially if
something more will change, of course.
Yeah,
it's like every other day, it's something new changes.
Exactly. For now, though, it's 36 minutes past the hour, and we need to leave on the top of the hour on this week. So, shall we leave this here, unless anyone's got any other thoughts in the chat, and head across to the community corner?
Yeah, chat. If you have anything else, go ahead. But yeah, we'll move on. Go ahead, Curtis. Take it away.
So, community corner. There's quite a lot here. This is more kind of like a few PSAs this week. So we'll run right through them, and then we'll get to our round robin for the end of the show.
Whys, why nots, and wheres.
Exactly. Whys, why nots, and wheres. So yeah, first off, this show is brought to us by our patrons. We don't have sponsors. We don't do ads or anything like that. So the money that our patrons give week in, week out, or monthly is what keeps us going. So thank you from the bottom of our hearts. Many of you are in the chat and you are here every week, and we really appreciate it. Couldn't do this without you. Quite literally, keep the lights on, as Sunwarper says quite often. If you like what you see here and you fancy helping us grow in the name of growing together, head across to patreon.com/audionautic. Pledges start at $2, which is, you can't get pledges for $2 these days. And for that, you get immediate access to our patron channels on Discord, and access to our Starstream Hangout, which is monthly, which is our next piece of information. That Starstream for this month is happening on the 16th of February, Sunday, the 16th of February, at the same time of ADSN, which is 7 p.m. UTC, 11 a.m. Pacific.
That's funny where the time in question is inverse. It's because we're flipped. But yes, 11.
Yeah, and 8 o'clock for those of us in Central Europe. So yeah, come down, have a look. It's like we'd just like to chill out. Many patrons who can't make the show live, like Hydra Fighter, for example, it's a chance to see what they're up to, see where they're at, check in. Hydra Fighter is coming out of his self-imposed hermetization for making music and understanding deeper the music he's making. And
I never thought I'd see him be doing Dallas stuff. That's like the biggest change I've ever seen. It's crazy. And I know it's going to be awesome. I haven't heard any of it yet, but or maybe he might have sent me something in the early iterations of his Dallas stuff. But yeah, from someone that, I mean, we covered him in older versions of Audionautic interviews and stuff like that. And he had these massive templates with all these cool things in Ableton. And I mean, but it just shows that sometimes it is helpful to shake things up and get outside of our comfort zone and do something in a way that that we don't normally do, which I think ties nicely into what you're about to talk about.
Yeah, just coming back to it officially, we are returning to our Discord challenges for 2025. It looks like the poll is going strong with the remixing of Lingering Light, with 100% to no one liking the idea of the opposite.
Oh, wow. And I spent all that time finding a nice transition to delete that. That's okay. That's okay. I'm going to post one more time in the chat. If you do want to hear what the original song was, it's here on this page on Bandcamp. But yeah.
So yeah, come down. We'll put the details after the end of the show into the Discord, and Sunwarper will bounce down the stems and give them to everyone, if that is indeed the way it's going to go. I can't see it going any other way. But yeah, if you are new to this channel, or if you are new to our Discord, this is just a Discord challenge that we do where we take this idea. It's fun. It's not meant to be taken too seriously, and it's just a way for us just to, throw a little sketch out into the world and maybe try something different and learn something new. We're not looking for releases. We're not looking for like importance to be placed upon it. It's just a place to kind of put through, and it's fun. Maybe try something different, work with a different workflow, or just try something you wouldn't have done before. So
yeah. I do have one clarification question I want to ask, because it's
Oh.
a weird way I made that track. So I can either export the SP chops of that sample, or what I actually did was I performed the track as a stereo 2 track into the DAW, and then stem split it, and then added MIDI on top of that. So I could also render out those stems. But I mean, I don't care either way, but I'd be curious to hear what, if people want the stems that I chopped and flipped from Curtis, or the actual final versions stems. So you can put that in the comments, put that in the chat, or throw it in the Discord after. But yeah, I see smile. Well, yeah, that doesn't surprise me that Smiling Ears would say stems. But if anybody else has an opinion, by all means. But not that we don't value your opinion. I just want to hear from everybody that's voting, just to see what everybody wants. I would assume probably stems would be the way to go. But it's kind of interesting. Those original chops have a little charm to them. So
yeah, so let us know. Yeah, it'd be good, and we'll put it for about 6 weeks from now. But get over to the Discord. If you're not part of our Discord, the link is in the description, and I'm sure.
Is that I just have to check? Is that a current link? Because you know how it changes every week. If not, I'll make a new one.
It should be absolutely
Discord.
fine.
We don't have the Nitro, so they don't let you do like over a week link.
It's there. I think it works. Okay. If you could put another one in just to be safe.
Yeah, I'll flip it around a little bit.
While I'm doing
Hold on a second.
While I introduce the last segment, and just to clarify, Smiling Arrows, who says if they're not your stems, then we're remixing Curtis. That's not quite. I made that mistake. It's definitely Sunwarper's track. He sampled my guitars from a track of mine on the route.
Split your guitar, and then I chopped them up. So just to clarify wordage and whatnot, the original chops I'm discussing are the ones that I took and flipped. So they're repitched, they're chopped into different ways, reversed, all that type of stuff. So there's that version, which is still different from the original track. And I would still include the drums and things like that. But these would be the actual chops, like the isolated, like micro chops of this. Or there's the full stems of the final track. So it's kind of like the puzzle pieces of what made Lingering Light, or the actual stems of Lingering Light.
Yeah. Thank you for that clarification.
Yeah, they're definitely not Curtis's original things. Not that there's anything wrong with his. They're dope. That's why I flipped them. But yeah, they've been changed. I added a bunch of effects and pitch things and stuff like that to them. Exactly.
So yeah, moving along, we have got 17 minutes. So we'll sidle on across to our
robin. Sorry, I don't mean to cut you off. I can't change the description while we're live, so I'll change that later. But I will put in the chat a new version of the Discord link.
Excellent, wonderful.
Right here.
There we go. Thank you. We'll put the updates to that. Oh, you did that.
I got it. Yeah, beat me to it.
And this time, in 6 weeks' time, so we'll put the date in the Discord. And like we said before, there will be a $10 Tom and gift card for anyone who we deem has. I don't like the word won, because it means it's a competition. But maybe
maybe we do something like everybody that's at the listening party votes for like the favorite or whatever. I don't know. We'll think of something, because this is why we were hesitant to add a sort of like winner thing in last year, because we don't want it to be a competition. It's not a competition, but we do want to create some incentive to get some more submissions and just everybody come together, because the more submissions we get, the more we can interact together and learn from each other. And yes, Smiling Ears, I see your Spotify voucher for first place. Yeah. But no, I just want to stress, like, we're trying to walk a fine line, because we don't want to make this a place of judgment, but we do want to create incentives so that we can have more and more submissions, and just more of us coming together to trade ideas and learn together. So this is what we're thinking. If you feel differently, feel otherwise, by all means, let us know. We're always open to feedback, but we want to try something like this. So
Exactly. Yeah. So yeah, and as ever, we will ebb and we'll flow and we'll keep moving. So yes, thank you for that. So with the round robin this week, third party versus stock plugins, not the quintessential good versus bad, but whys, why not, and wheres. The notion of the world is full of both, and there's neither is wrong. But when do we tend to use our stock? When do we tend to use third party? Why, for example, why do we make those conscious decisions that we make? Again, not from a space of doing anything better than anyone else, but it's just a case of highlighting why we might use it. So someone listening might be able to experience a different perspective.
Yeah. So where do you want to start? We don't have Eon Lake to just like throw it to.
Go. Yeah. Well, I can either take the lead, but I mean, as I'm quite happy for you to take the lead, seeing as you've been sitting on it.
Yeah, I mean, I'm easy either way. I can start though. I like stock plugins a lot. I think it depends on what DAW you're using, right? But like, I mean, I think the SP404, which is not my DAW, obviously, but it has a gazillion effects in it. Those are stock effects, but I use those all the time. But in a DAW, like Logic has some really good stock plugins, and I like learning those first, and then if you feel like there's a gap in what it can do that another plugin that you buy can do, that's when it makes sense. And Smiling Airs asks plugins for sounds or effects. I say, why not both? That's what we're talking about. Just plugins in general. The like retro synth, one of the stock plugins from Logic, use it all the time. The stock plugins in Reason, that's one of the few reasons I still use Reason, is that there's some on there. Yeah, reasons to use Reason, right?
Good reason.
Like there, it's just, I always think it comes down to the best plugin is the one you know most. Not the most expensive. Even same with gear, right? You could buy a crazy $4,000 piece of gear, but if you don't understand how to use it and you do understand like a mini log, you're probably going to get a better sound with the way you can tweak the mini log comparatively. Of course, it depends like what the stock sound is, but I mean, if you're trying to design a sound, I think there's a strength to knowing something inside and out. Like I use the stock Logic compressor for masters, for everything, because I just know how to make it work in every like need or use case that I have. I do have other compressors, and when I do need something that does something a little special, I'll go to those. And it's the same with synths. Like if I really need that Prophet sound, of course I'm going to go to Repro 5. What is that from Yuhi? I think it's been a while since I've been in my DAW, quite honestly, other than for mixing and mastering. But yeah, then I go to something that's like a specialty thing. But I just think if you can learn a free or a stock plugin inside and out and then buy stuff, it breaks some of that consumerism and gas, because that does exist, like plug-in gas, pass, whatever. It does exist. And so there's always like, that AI delay, right? Like there's always some way that we talked about a couple of months ago. There's always something they're trying to hype up about what this new piece can do. But really, if you step back and you're like, well, I'm using this one that's pretty much the same thing, and I didn't have to spend any extra for it. Hey, I'm always for being pro-consumer. So yeah. What about you?
Similarly, I think just making a note of the timestamp for when this started, so I don't have to go back to it later. I agree with you for the majority, and for the reasons that you've stated. But also, I think I want to highlight some other reasons, and I keep coming back to it. CPU.
Oh yeah,
CPU.
That's huge.
Yeah, if you are replicating anything you want to do, I'm an Ableton Live user, and if the whole point of that is geared towards this idea of live reproduction of the things that you make, right? And as someone who's got quite a big rig, and sometimes uses 4 or 5 different basses, the notion of that, if they were all third-party plugins, that could get up and that could begin to eat up. Additionally, DAWs, their stock plugins are latency free, and they don't use any CPU, so to speak, or relatively so. which makes sequencing and makes playing with hardware a lot easier and a lot more effective in that regard. I think you also learn more. I think with a lot of third-party plugins, they have some great presets, and I think the tendency can be, or the inclination can be, to throw a preset on and call it done. And I think that's, while it's tempting and while there is definitely merit to that, there's nothing wrong with that. I think there's a lot to be learned from dialing in something yourself. Stock plugins might not always have the depth that third-party plugins do, but you can find that depth through your own means, through layering and through, you know, parallel processing of effects, for example, which in the long run, you learn more. You know, you learn more along the way. You know, I think there's nothing wrong with throwing on a preset and calling it done, but I think you are incidentally robbing yourself of knowledge, I suppose. You know, it's like what's that phrase? Giving a man a fish versus teaching him how to fish, for example. That old saying. That said, go on.
No, I was just the saying. Took you a minute to get there, but yeah, I was like, that is quite an old saying. Yeah.
But yeah, that said, I know third-party plugins can be useful. I use it for mastering. I think I use more third-party plugins for mastering than I do for mixing and for producing. Just, I don't know. I think more because I spend so much time using stock plugins and stuff like that, it's an opportunity for me to use the plugins that I've bought and with that, for example.
Yeah.
Maybe there's a bit of that in there. I'm also not as big a lover of mastering as you are. I know how to do it. I do it. I master for myself. I master for clients, but I don't get as much of a joy out of it. So maybe there I can, you know, either create my own presets or have presets there which work. I can, you know, call it done, you know, because I just want to get it done. So yeah, so like I agree with, in short, I agree with you. I think that stock plugins are a way to go in the long run, because I think you learn a lot more. Third-party plugins can be a lot of fun at the same time. They are very dazzling and they can be good for exploration, just in a different way.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of really cool third-party plugins. It's easy to get like, oh, let me buy this one, let me buy that one, you know? So it's like, for me personally, I'm like, well, let me see what I can get out of this. And I mean, I will say I've used a good number of DAWs, and I mean, I don't know if Mike is still here, but I know Mike loves Ableton. I used Ableton, but not enough to like say, but their stock stuff was really cool. But Ableton's not Ableton, Logic stock stuff is awesome. And like they bought that Alchemy synth and like put that into Logic that used to be from some third party or something, and that thing is insanely powerful. And then yeah, like Smiling Airs mentioned samplers. I mean, any stock sampler is there's so much flexibility with a sampler, right? You know, and adding a couple of effects. And then the interesting thing is Logic's been adding some new, they call them chroma effects, like chroma verb, chroma glow, which are supposedly using AI. You know, I don't care about that, but the chroma glow is a really nice saturator, and that's replaced a lot of usages of even tape mellowify for me and things like that, because it's got a really nice saturation and things. The only effect that I don't think they even have one that does it is a like a soft clip for mastering.
Okay, yeah.
I still use Gold Clip for that from, I think it's Schwab Digital or something, but that thing's crazy. And that thing's really good even for uses that you wouldn't normally think of using it for, like gain staging and getting some crunchiness out of samples and stuff. And then of course I will always mention Dr. Vibe. That's a third-party plugin that I use on like everything now. When I need to make it sound like an SP, but in the DAW, Dr. Vibe. But yes, so that's what I mean. There's nothing wrong with third-party. There's nothing wrong with stock. It's just I think we always try to approach it from a consumer standpoint, and it's like, well, if you can not spend money, that's better than spending money. Just get to creating. So whatever can get you creating faster, and you can understand and use. And then the other thing too is like if you're using a different computer. Like when I go to the studio where I teach at, when I'm teaching production, they don't have all the third-party plugins I have on mine. So it's nice to know the stock plugins because it's universal. If you're using Logic on anybody's computer or at work or something, it's the same. Those same plugins are the same thing. So like I can go to retro synth, we can program a synth, you know, so it's nice to have that kind of universal approach.
Yeah, completely. I think that sums it up really well. It's a really universality is a good way of looking at it as well. We'd like to know what you guys think. We are just, again, two dudes with a podcast, and we have some ideas, but we'd love to know if you are, if you're here live, or if you are watching back, or even if you are on streaming platforms where you get your podcasts, if you would like to tell us what your preference is and why, we'd love to know. Either leave us a comment or head across to our Discord and join the discussion there.
Yeah, definitely. I'll put the new Discord link in the edit after, and it will be in the show notes on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. I want to say iTunes, but man, that is an old statement. But if you are on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, any of the podcast platforms, please do consider leaving a rating, a review. It helps a ton. If you're watching on YouTube, give us a thumbs up, subscribe if you haven't, do comment. That is the best way to kind of show the YouTube algorithm and any of these algorithms to show this to more people. Last year we were in the top 20% of Spotify video podcasts, or 40. I think it was 20%. I
think it was top 10.
I have no idea. I'll say 20, but yeah, it might have been 10%. I'll undersell us, but yeah. So we're always trying to grow, reach new ears, and reach new eyes, and you know, because that's how we grow. The more people we can connect with, just like what we're saying with the challenges that we're doing, the more we can all learn together. And I think that's the beauty of this place we've created, is that we have all people with different kinds of experiences and ways of making music, and we can all come together and learn something from each other. So it means the world to have you along for this with us. And yeah, if you're not on the Discord, head over there. We'll talk over there. Starstream in 2 weeks, right? For patrons?
Yeah, 2 weeks, 16th.
17th, I think, Sunday, 11 a.m.
16th.
Yeah, so it's coming. It's coming soon. Yeah. But with that, we will be back next week, 11 a.m. Pacific, 7 p.m. UTC. Curtis, anything you want to add before we go?
No, just thank you to everyone. I say no and then say something, but to those who have been
so you should say yes.
Yeah, just say yeah. Thank you for being here. It's lovely. You could be anywhere in the world. You could be doing anything. You choose to spend an hour with us. It means the world. So thank you very much indeed. Yeah.
It's awesome. So we will see you next week. I got to load up this little outro. They keep moving it to different spots. It's in media assets now, right? Yeah. Okay. All right. Until next week, it's been great seeing you. Did you finish that whole cup of tea?
Of course I did.
Was it cold by the end?
Yeah. But that's
that always bugs me. Like if you're sipping it for too long, like coffee too, it just gets cold. You're like, ugh.
I'm British. We can do cold tea. It's all good.
All right. You can make that sacrifice.
Sorry, English. Don't want to tar the Scots and the Welsh with British. I'm English. Sorry. Yeah.
All right. Well, there we go. Well, thank you for that. And I'm glad you enjoyed your tea. You said it's a new tea. Was it good?
That's all right. Sleepy. Yeah. Sleepy tea.
Why are you having sleepy tea when you got to talk?
Because I had 2 coffees today, not just one. So that's already too much caffeine. So it's like it's got to be like a 0 caffeine.
I didn't even think. I thought you just drank tea, no coffee.
I do drink coffee. Since I started at my job where I'm at now, I started drinking coffee again. What
type of coffee are you drinking?
Don't. It's embarrassing because it's just the stuff that comes out. It's
Do they even have Folgers? Is that like a instant coffee or something that you're having?
Alza is the Czech form of Amazon. No, we don't get Amazon here, and so they just get bags of Alza coffee beans. It's awful, but hey, teachers.
But it gets the job done.
Exactly.
Do you put milk in it? Sugar? Anything? Just black.
No milk. No, just black. Like my soul.
Okay.
Just
all right. All right. Well, with that, we'll call it a day then. Thanks for watching it. We'll see you next time.